Hi, everyone. My name is Melanie. I'm the national spokesperson for the Tiny House Alliance USA. I'm here to do Real Tiny Talk with Kim today. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Kim.
Yes. First, thanks for having me. Excited to be talking today. My name's Kim Roquemore, and I have been living tiny for about 2.5 years. I live tiny with my husband and our 5-year-old daughter, and it's been fantastic. Before that, I lived in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath traditional house, and it just wasn't for us. It wasn't giving us the freedom that we wanted or the balance that we wanted. And it took like a pretty big life happening to kind of hit us in the face for us to realize that, living tiny could afford us that and what we really wanted. And here we are today,
Yeah.
loving it.
Well, and I have some we have some similarities because we both came out of corporate America.
We
We are
did.
we are both like the corporate American dropouts.
Yep,
And that's
that's
the
right.
funny
Oh,
thing.
we need t-shirts that say
We need
that. Can we get
t-shirts.
t-shirts?
Let's make t-shirts.
Yeah.
But yeah, we both went through, and yours was a layoff because I read your book,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, yeah. So
Um,
it wasn't quite a layoff. It was they were consolidating um the position. And so they were technically letting us both go. And then myself and another director were going to have to apply for the consolidated position. And at that point, I was already working excessive hours, not seeing my
okay.
family. And I was making good money. It was really good money, but everything else was out of whack. And I just remember sitting there and thinking, this is not what I want. This is when my daughter looks at me, I do not want her to look at me and think, oh my God, like this is what success looks like. Cause it was a
Right,
terrible picture of success. Terrible.
right. Well, see, and I grew up, so my parents separated when I was in my teenage years. And so it's kind of raised by a single mom, but my dad was very much in the picture. And I remember my mother, she's a school teacher. She would work all day at school, pick us up, run us around, drop us off, and then she would tutor in the evenings. And then it was like rush home, everybody get fed and take showers and go to bed and repeat. And that was, most of my junior high to high school life. And not that she didn't do like everything she could do, right? Because that's what she was doing. She was supporting us. But she was working 2 jobs, sometimes 3 while we were growing up. And I'm just so like the model of success that we have in this world that we see all the time, it's it's exhausting. Like I
It is.
thought I don't want to be like that. I don't want to work. I love to work, but I don't want to work that hard that I lose my relationships with people.
Yeah.
And our relationship did suffer, my mother and
Yeah.
I, for many years because
Yeah.
of that. Um, so it's hard, and that's a generation that very much did that type of stuff. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of led into the next generation doing it. But so what's that
Yeah.
now? You didn't build your tiny house, right? You bought it. And what
Right.
size is it? Because I don't remember.
Now that you're asking me,
Oh,
okay, I want to say it's 30, I want to say it's 32 foot.
okay,
So 30 by 8.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
like triple axle or 3 tires?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. And we have 2 lofts. So my daughter has her own loft. We have our loft. And then we have a bedroom slash living room office area that we use for guests. And then, when we're working on our computers and things like that. And then we have like TV in there. We have
Okay.
our dining living area and then our kitchen and then our bathroom.
On the
Um,
end. Okay.
yeah, on the end. So it is I want to say it's 399
Yeah.
square feet. Um, but yeah, it's perfect. It's the perfect size for us.
So I see, and I don't have kids, so I rarely ever answer questions about living tiny with kids, but I see all, oh, you'll never do it with kids. You can never do this with kids. I grew up I laugh because I grew up like traveling around as a little kid in the back of a camper on the back of a truck, like, and I'm thinking my parents raised us on the road when we were little and did all this stuff. Of course you could live in a tiny house with kids. So w- what would be your advice for somebody who said that, living with kids is too hard in a tiny house? Or what do you think about as she gets older? Is she going to have enough space and all those kinds of things that people like talk about? Because I think that's a fear factor for people going
Mhm.
tiny that have children.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. And you're in my group, you'll often see the questions about kids and that was one of our biggest concerns, or one of my husband's biggest concerns, was going tiny with our daughter. I Her loft is cooler than any room I ever had
Right.
growing up. I
Best
love
answer ever.
I love her loft. And so she has her own space. So what I would say to people is make sure you are including them in the planning. So you need to create a space just for them, whatever that looks like. It doesn't have to be a loft, but they need their own space where they can feel like they have ownership of that.
Yeah.
And then also include them in the functionality of the space, right? Like her loft has baskets everywhere. She has, her bookcases because she loves books, right? So she bookcases are filling the walls. We're using all of that wall space, all of that vertical space, to make the most out of it. Her window backs right up on a tree, so she gets to watch birds, and we put a bird feeder up there. I mean, her place is just
Nice.
cool.
Yeah.
Like I would love to have that space when I was we have thought about what that looks like when she gets older, and we don't really know yet. We haven't gotten there, but right where she's at, I mean, we feel good about, the space serving her well.
Yeah. And I've had thousands of people come and visit our tiny house, which ours is much smaller because we're an 8 by 18 foot. But when the kids come to see the tiny house, it's the best reaction ever. They come in and they're like, "Oh, hammocks! This is so cool!" And mom, can I live here? And it's that kind of response. And I think of it like when I was little, I loved tree houses, right? Kids like to play outside tree
Mhm.
houses and stuff. It's like a mini house for a kid, and they're like, everything is right where I need it to be, but
Yes,
it's still a full house. And I think they kind of get that impression that it's almost made for them
I love that.
in some way. I think as adults, we think, oh, tiny house and unique place for us. But I think when a child views it, they're like, oh, this is cool. This is like built for me. And I think that kind of gets missed sometimes with parents, is not thinking about how that child might really love that space.
Mhm.
Like I said, I don't have
Absolutely.
kids, but that's just been my perception of how much they've loved coming to visit. And when my when my niece came to visit and she got up in my loft and was going to take a nap, she was so excited she couldn't take a nap. She just kept like peeking out the window and looking over. She's like, "This is great." So,
Yeah, I mean, Jordan and I struggled more in the transition of going tiny than she did. It was nothing for her, like we went from that 3 bedroom, 2 bath, um, and having to downsize and go through our clothes and get rid of all the five same things that we had in the kitchen, right? All of that journey.
yeah,
But she just took it in stride. It was nothing for her to go
right.
tiny. It was the first day she's like, okay, we've been doing this for forever.
Yeah, it's time now, mom. Come on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think
So
kids are really adaptable to
yeah.
spaces as long as their needs are being met, and they're comfortable and warm and have their toys and their food and what I don't necessarily think that they have a hard time adjusting as much as people think that they will,
Yeah,
or perceive
absolutely.
like privacy issues. I get the privacy question even with my husband and I, like, how do you get privacy? And I'm like, well, he goes to work, he's gone all day, I'm here all day. It's kind of like what we did before.
Mhm.
Um, and if we wanted to close a loft, you could close a loft in, but we
Yeah,
haven't because it's just us. But yeah, I mean, if you close in the space, then the child has their own private area to be in, and I think it
yeah,
works.
and what hers is. I mean, it's closed in for the most part, except for the entrance. Ours
Okay,
is the same. We have the privacy that we need.
right.
She's just, and not only that, she gets her own space, but I think oftentimes, we lose sight of the big picture when we're thinking about going tiny. Like she got her mom back, right? Like
Yeah.
what what is going to
Yes.
have a bigger impact on her life, having a traditional sized bedroom or having her mom present in her life?
Yeah.
And so I think people just need to kind of reprioritize what they're looking and putting their values on.
Absolutely. Yeah, and not just that, but then probably even more outside time and that connection with you guys together and being able to go and take trips and travel and do things that you didn't have the time to do. So it's not, people think, oh, you just sit in your tiny house all day long. And like, I love my tiny house, but I'm like out in the yard with chickens and gardens and building, and I'm
Mhm.
not in it 24/7. I'm not like I'm not a shut in in my
Yeah,
tiny.
yeah, absolutely. Like, she's gonna get to take her first international trip this year. But this living tiny has really allowed us to travel, which I know you see. I get all giddy and post about it. Um, but I mean, we went to Italy last year, which was a dream trip of ours. We're going to Greece as a family for a month, which is another dream trip of ours. I mean, that is provided by this lifestyle.
Right,
Um, and so, we wouldn't be able to do that with her had
right.
we not just lived this way.
Yeah. And we're in a similar boat. We like to travel. We've been to Jamaica, I think 3 times since we've gone tiny.
Love
Um,
Jamaica.
COVID kind of cut us off a little bit on traveling to other countries, but Jamaica stayed open, so we went. Yes, let's
Yeah.
go. And then we've got Jamaica booked again for this July, and then I think next year we'll be looking at some other parts of the world, but that was an easy one to get to. And then, well, my speaking engagements, because I'm
Hmm.
traveling Florida or Georgia or wherever, so it's been a lot of United States travel, but it's
Yeah.
hard to do when you have like, because we have a little homestead now, so it's a little harder for us to just pick up and go for a long amount of time with the dog and the chickens and gardens. So, um, but yeah, we're planning
Very,
some more of that too. And so you're working, well, you have worked with us for the ASTM initiative,
mhm.
to help create standards. You were a proponent coming in as a consumer on that as well as I am. And I know that you're parked in a legal location, right? Like you're in a campground location, RV park, or
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you want to talk about like the really challenging side of going tiny,
yeah,
and yeah, are pieces of actually like downsizing and making sure you're purchasing a good home or you find a good builder, right? There are challenges along the way, but the biggest challenge is I can honestly say I'm living how I want. I am not living where I want.
and I think
And
that's common. I think that is
yeah,
really common for almost every time. And I will tell you that even though I'm on my own land and I'm a legal dwelling, I didn't like pick my dream land.
mhm,
Like I had to go and buy land where I was allowed to be legal.
right.
So had we been given like a free choice to go and pick what we wanted, we probably wouldn't have purchased this land.
Yeah.
So I can completely relate, even though I'm still in a legal situation, because
Mhm.
you're so tied down to that.
Yes, it's almost it's really discouraging. It's we live our lives in a little town about 15 minutes from where our tiny house is located. And when I say we live our lives, I mean we grocery shop there. My kid goes to school there. My husband teaches there, right? Like
Right.
she's in daycare. That's where we live our lives, but we are not legally allowed to live there the way we want to.
Right.
And so we had to live, and we live in a tiny house community, but it's not where we would choose to be. It's, even the way it's ran is not what we would prefer, right? Like, so if there were any other choice within a 30 to 45-minute radius, we would go there. And I think that's really frustrating to a lot of tiny home goers because they get into this situation where they decide they want to go tiny, and then they suddenly discover that the way that our coding and zoning has been set up in this country is very, very unfriendly to
Yeah.
people who want to live like
Yeah. Well, and
it.
even in a lot of states, just even building a tiny house on a foundation, like trying to build something that's under 600 square feet or something that's 400 square feet in many areas is not permissible.
Not,
And I
no.
always get a lot of kickback like, "Oh, well, people don't do their research or you buy the wrong land." And I'm like, I look at them and I go, "You can do research till your eyes fall out on this because I've done it."
Yeah,
Basically. And
yeah,
it it doesn't help when there's 0 places to go. And then you're forced with,
yes,
well, if I want to live a simpler lifestyle and have an amazing life and like for you, be here for my daughter or for me, be here and not lose my husband, um, and just live simply, that I have to uproot my whole life and move to where I'm allowed to do that. And
yeah,
uh, it's extremely frustrating part of the process because we just have to go where we're allowed to be. And I think that's one of the reasons that I work on standards. I know that's one of the reasons that you came forward to vote for the standards as well, because hopefully that will help bring about more parking with cities and counties to adopt it. But you're right, the zoning laws
it's
are a joke. It's a joke.
oh, yeah. We have presented to 4 cities. We've gone through 2 counties. And there's this prevalent not in my backyard
Yeah,
attitude, right? So sure, that's great. Like I support you however you want to live, but not in my backyard.
right.
Um, and getting over that, I mean, sometimes I feel like we're just a little bit ahead of our
Yeah,
time. uh,
yeah.
and in 10 years that this will be sorted and everyone, it'll be better for
But I
everyone.
hope I hope sooner than 10 years.
I do too. I really, really do.
I
Um,
think back to like, we didn't used to build big houses. We didn't used to have these big subdivisions with 2,300 and 3,000 square foot houses that were like blocked in right next to each other with no yards. That wasn't the type of homes that we produced in this country for a very long time. And I drive around my area because this is a very old country, and there are little shotgun houses out here that are like 400 square feet and little, brick cabins and stuff that are smaller than what I live in.
oh yeah,
Smaller. And I'm like, they were doing that then, and then everything just shifted to big. And now we're just trying to shift it back, and everybody's throwing a fit. It's like, come
yeah.
on.
It,
We
you're
have
right.
more important things to do than this in the world. I
Yes, absolutely. And I know, I hear a lot of the fallback um, reasoning from people is that tiny houses aren't safe, right?
Yeah.
They don't have the regulated coding to ensure that they're safe. And my husband and I, we're very interested in, which could be considered ironic. We're interested in real estate, and so and investing in real estate.
Right.
And we will go and we will look at these multifamily units that are available. And I'm going through and I'm thinking, this is this is standard because I'm seeing so many things in these properties
Yeah.
that I would not think are safe. But
Right.
coding and zoning says, "Huh, they're safe enough." I wouldn't allow that level of, and I say quality with
Right.
quotations around it, of work in my tiny house.
Yeah.
So I think it's just lack of education and
Right.
knowledge about the quality that goes into these tiny houses. I
Yeah.
mean, we have the tiny houses that I have seen, and I live in a tiny house community. I
Right.
mean, the quality of materials and the craftsmanship are way higher than these manufactured houses that are coming out now.
Yeah.
And they're deemed perfectly safe.
Right.
So I really, really, really wish that the coding and the zoning, they would just become educated,
Right.
um, would use the resources around them to go and visit these tiny houses because
Right.
I quite honestly, I think it's really ironic that in our area you have to be homeless to live in a tiny house because they have tiny house villages for homeless people, but I wouldn't qualify because I'm
Oh
not
no.
homeless,
You're not
right?
homeless, but they won't
So I have
legalize
to,
your home, but you're not homeless.
right, right.
Right.
So I think that just doesn't make sense to me.
And
Mm-mm.
it's and the kickback that I see on the other end is the money. Oh, well, they can't make money off of us. And I always
Mhm.
laugh because I've been on my land now for almost 3 years, and when we built our house, we paid 27 for just the materials, not the labor, because we did it. Um, 27,000. My house is currently assessed by my state and valued at $26,000, and it's 5 years old. And I'm like,
Wow.
where is the depreciation in this? Where is that happening? And the more of us that get on land that can show that, I think they'll actually be able to see their now I'm never gonna be 125,000 or $400,000 home that they're gonna be able to tax at that level. But the
Sure.
fact that I am holding my value with my state, and my land has increased, but that's probably just because we cleaned it up. We've
Mhm.
improved the value by tearing down the burnt down house and stuff, but the value of the home hasn't dropped yet.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting. So I think because of the stick construction, maybe we will see that they actually do hold value differently than how we deem RVs or cars versus tiny houses with the wood construction. And I'm very interested in that too because I worked in real estate for a while, so yeah, I understand. I've seen some stuff I don't wanna see again.
Yeah. I'm
I
like,
really have.
I wouldn't buy this and put tenants in it.
Right?
Would I rent my tiny house out? In a heartbeat,
Yeah, right,
because I know the quality,
right.
right? And we have egress windows and we have
The
the
safety alarms and the fire extinguishers and
fire extinguishers everywhere. Like and also like my electric was done properly. My plumbing was done properly. Like I know
right,
those things.
right.
Um, I just think it's extremely ironic and honestly just it just goes to show the challenge we have in this country with accepting change when
Yeah,
it doesn't benefit the people who maybe sometimes always need to see the benefit in it for them. Like it
right,
benefits the people as a population,
right.
not the people who are maybe at the very top.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I definitely think that's part of it. And I'm not excited about where our housing market is right now and the housing crisis that we're facing both in the United States and other countries as well. And I as much as I don't like that, I'm also kind of like, hey, maybe it's like a really good time for you to start paying attention to us now because like
Yeah.
we could get houses rolling out there to people who do work. like the homeless that work, the homeless that just can't afford the rentals or the cost of the sticks and bricks type house, could have an affordable home and maintain and live in their area. So, yeah, I think there's some big changes coming with that. So, it's
I
nice
sure hope
to.
so.
Oh man, I tell you. Me too. Me
I
too.
hope so.
And I think I think the standards, and part of the standards will include the safety that you're talking about.
Mhm.
And once those things have been created, and it's not that we don't build to those things already. We have safety codes. We have, fire codes that we can build to, and building codes that we can build to. So we can prove that we can meet all of those codes already, but there's nothing in a standard that specifically says this house does this. And I think
Mhm.
once that comes out, then people will go, okay, now we can go on with it.
Yeah.
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 So,
That being said, in that journey of, talking to these cities and the counties, I've my experience has actually been more successful with talking to the cities that are surrounding me. And I just want to applaud the people who are on the coding and zoning boards that are sticking their necks out there, that are
yeah.
advocating
Yep.
this thing. Like we just appreciate them so, so very,
Absolutely.
because they are the minority.
Right.
Um, but they are paving the way.
Yeah.
Um, so appreciate that. I've met a couple of individuals that I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you. We need
Yeah.
to clone you and have you sit on every board. And
Right. Yeah.
so,
And I've met some great ones too. And I work with, other zoning and building officials that are like, we love these. We want to, we'd love to have these. We just don't know what to do with them yet. And they're stuck. They're doing a job. They can't, they'll get fired. I mean,
mhm,
they can get in big
yeah,
trouble. They're not
yeah,
trying to do it to be mean. They're just trying to do a job they're trying to do. So it's a frustrating process for sure, for all the way around, but I have met so many of them like you that I tell people, please don't be scared of your zoning officials, your building inspectors, your health department. Like, their job is to help you to the
mhm,
best of their
yeah,
ability, and a lot of them are really wonderful to work with. Even if they can't help you at the end of the day,
right.
they're still like back there rooting for you. So it's a
Yeah,
process
yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I have a couple of those that I've come across, and I so appreciate them. I would say that's been the most challenging and frustrating part of going tiny, is just not having the freedom to choose where you live. I know the
Which
majority.
to me is ironic because we live on wheels. Like,
Yes,
I'm on
yes,
wheels,
right?
but I can't go where I want to go. But I
Yes,
want to live in my
exactly.
house. Yeah. But there's the whole perception that you're on wheels and you could just pick up and move and then you're sitting here like, yeah, I'm gonna get fined and kicked and threatened and hide, and there isn't that freedom that is perceived anymore.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, no, for sure. I know all the people who are living in this community have expressed that in one way or the other. Like, if there were another option, we would be there, right? But it's just so limited. And so if you want to live this way, you go with what's available to you.
Right.
Um, I'm so hopeful it's going to change.
Well, me too. And I think the standards will definitely open up a lot of doors. I'm grateful that you're involved in that with us and have been sharing and watching that along the way. So, but it was great to get to chat with you today and kind of hear about living in your tiny and everything. So, you have a group on Facebook. It's called Tiny, is it Tiny House
House,
Haven?
yes, at Tiny House Haven. Hmm.
Tiny House Haven. So you guys can check out Kim's house and see pictures and follow her trip because I know she's going to post pictures from that,
Oh,
and
yeah,
her pictures are
lots of
awesome. And I will catch up with you more online.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on.